Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodholt. In this week following All Saints Sunday, I'm recounting some encounters I had with a gravedigger over a succession of years. In most cases, I'm sharing some nugget of wisdom, some way he had of looking at the world that was so full of God's love and grace that I have never forgotten them. But this time was a little different. This time, the gravedigger had had another health scare, and in fact, things did not look good for him in his recovery. As he talked about facing death, he said he didn't feel strong. I responded with something, some platitude, I'm sure. And Reverend, he went on, as if I hadn't said anything at all. Sometimes I think most of my tears are for me. What do you mean? I asked. Dying is hard, he said. I mean, I know I'm not dying right now, or next week, or maybe for quite a while, but it's coming, and it scares me. You're afraid of death? I said, surprised, a bit because of how often he had shown me such a profound and deep faith. No, that ain't it, he said. And then he paused to consider his next words. It ain't the end of the journey that's the trouble. It's the getting there that's hard. You don't want to struggle and suffer, I said. And he nodded. I saw my wife do that, he said. That is hard, I answered him. And the only thing I can say is that as we get near that time, God does not forsake us. God is with us to help us always. He said, Reverend, there's something else I can say. I was with my wife when she passed. And Reverend, right at the end, there was such a peace that came over her. A peace and a rest. And I ain't never told nobody this, Reverend. And his voice got real quiet. But right at that moment, I didn't feel sorrow. The sorrow came later. Right then, all I felt was joy. You loved her so much, I said, and your faith is so strong. I think it's okay because right then you knew she was free from her pain and safe in God's arms. He was looking off away from me so I wouldn't see his tears. Yes, sir, Reverend, he said. We sat in silence for a moment when he said, Death is a part of life, ain't it, Reverend? I nodded as he went on. Life has its beginnings and everybody's happy. And life has its ending and everybody's sad. I wondered where he was going with all this. Then he said, but right then, because of Jesus, you're happy as can be. It's a new beginning. I smiled, and all I could think of to say was, Amen. Another time there had been a death in my family, and as we left the funeral home, I saw the gravedigger across the street, not coming inside, but waiting outside for me. Nan got a ride with her sister-in-law, and I went over to him. We sat on a low stone wall as we talked once more about issues of faith, death, and life. Finally, as our time drew to a close, the gravedigger raised his head and pointed across the street. Ever notice, Reverend, that we don't call it a funeral house? It's a funeral home. When we're there, we're not really there. We're home with God. This time we smiled, and both of us said together, forever. Forever and ever. I guess I need to catch up with my family, I said. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir, Reverend, he said. But he wasn't quite through with me. See the colors in the sunset, Reverend? And I said, yes. Sunset means the day is over, he said. But it also means there's going to be a tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.